You know what one of the best business decisions Warren Buffett ever made was? Passing on investing in the dot-com bubble. Late 90s, early 2000s, everyone and their brother was throwing billions of dollars at tech companies. Companies with no revenue, no profits, just a website and a dream. And there's Buffett sitting on the sidelines. People called him outdated, out of touch. They said he didn't understand the new economy, that the rules had changed and the Oracle of Omaha just couldn't see it. And then the bubble burst. And suddenly the guy who didn't get it was the only one still standing with his capital intact. While everyone else was licking their wounds and explaining to their investors how they lost everything, Buffett was ready to deploy capital into actual businesses at fire sale prices. Sometimes the best deals you do are the ones you don't do. I'm Joe Downs, CEO of Belrose Group, and today we're flipping the script. We always talk about the wins, the closings, the ribbons cuttings, the success stories. But today we're going to talk about the deals that almost happened and why walking away was the smartest move our students made all year. With me today is Jack Pezzino. Jack is our VP of Acquisitions and lead mentor with Scott Meyers Self Storage Academy. And Jack, welcome to the show. And 2025 has been interesting for deal flow so far, hasn't it?
Thanks for having me, Joe. Appreciate you welcoming me back here. But 2025 was certainly an interesting year, to say the least. A lot of ups, but not every up was a deal closing. At times, it was those ones that you were referring to where folks ended up walking away.
Yeah, no, I'm excited actually to talk about and share some of these stories with folks. So let me tell you what we are going to talk about today. So today we're going to cover a few situations where our students dodged bullets, and these weren't small caliber rounds. These are financial disasters that would have sunk their deals and their capital. All right, so first we're going to talk about Mike in Bay City, Michigan, and the tenant that had a little secret that the seller forgot to mention. Then we're going to talk about father-son team that thought they had a signed deal until they actually read what the seller sent back. And it turns out, well, we'll get to that. And then third, we've got a deal in Texas that looked perfect on paper until one of our students ran the numbers on the property tax reassessment. And well, let's just say there was a spoiler alert there. And then if we have time, we're going to cover a fourth deal, the Paul, Idaho deal, where the red flags weren't just waving, they were having a full-on parade. So, all right, Jack, you ready to jump right in here?
Yeah.
All right. So, Jack, what happened with Mike in Bay City?
So Bay City, Mike was on and off looking for deals and found this one in Bay City, Michigan. It was a hybrid facility. It was both storage and RV and boat. Numbers looked great initially, and then we got the rent roll, and we were going through the rent roll together as we were going through the due diligence, and the same name popped up a handful of times where it was interesting. So I went back and with Mike, we highlighted the name, and then we realized this one guy was paying about 25% of the facility's revenue
Across multiple units?
Yeah, across multiple units. He had some parking spots. He had some storage units. Like, he was all throughout the facility. And then on top of that, like, we were looking at, I had asked Mike to go back and look into the market in the standpoint of, hey, if any of these, not only this tenant, but any of these other people were to leave, what are the rates that people are paying today for the same size unit? And
you know, let me cut you off for a second, because I know where this story's going, because we lived it. But I want to just touch on something here that I just thought of. So when you have a tenant with multiple units, there's another danger there. And well, you know what? We'll come back to it. I'll drop that little tease right there. There's another danger. Go ahead, continue telling your story.
Yeah. So when Mike did his due diligence, doing the competitor analysis, just trying to rent units at neighboring facilities, he realized this guy wasn't just renting about 25% of the facility and paying about 25% of the revenue. If he were to leave, he was paying 30 to 40% above market rates too.
Hello.
So now, if this guy were to end up leaving, he needs to now figure out how to replace all that revenue. with rates that would need to be 30 to 40% below that rate, which when you
So
get to
break,
numbers,
br-
that's a little hard.
yeah, let's break that down. So 25% of the revenue was 25 to 30% or even maybe even more above market rent.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, can you imagine the hit that would have in valuation if that guy were to leave?
Well, Mike wasn't too worried about it yet. So him and his partner were going out to Bay City. They wanted to see the market. They had a couple other people on their list to go see. There was another owner they wanted to talk to. They went out there, and again, this is why you say this all the time, and this is just another reason why you do it. But they went out there and they were doing their due diligence at the facility. They wanted to visit the facility, see what was going on. And guess who was there?
The tenant. You know what? Maybe this is now where I'm going to drop in what I teased before. Folks, you got to be careful when you have someone with that much, either that many units, or in this case, it even worse, that much of the revenue of the facility. If you're in your underwriting, if you're planning on raising rates and the your models driven by being able to raise rents by X amount, whatever that is, a year, that's one thing when you're doing it, to one unit or all, let's pick round numbers, 100 units with 100 different customers. Yeah, you're going to lose a few. But the increase in rent should make up for it. And, likely you'll replace them. You increase one tenant, you think you're increasing, let's use big numbers. Let's say, 10 units this guy had. Maybe he had more, I don't even know. But if you're increasing one tenant, but it's 10 units, or worse, you don't realize, you think you're just increasing all the units, but really you're increasing one person by a significant amount. When it's that concentrated, you're gonna run into some issues. We've actually experienced this in the past. So that was what I wanted to drop in there. You need to be mindful of this, regardless of what the outcome of this tenant staying or going is. That's a real issue that you need to understand and manage. So go ahead, Jack. What happened?
Yeah. So had no plan on meeting this guy, and he was at the facility, and he saw a guy moving out, and he was just like, "Hey, well, what's like? I'm looking at buying this facility. I have it under contract." And he was like, "Oh, like I'm actually moving out of all my units." Mike now is like, "Wait, what do you mean all your units?" He's like, "Oh, I'm over here. I have this one. I have that one." I talked to the owner like a month ago. He knew this. Mike now,
Oof.
what? What do you mean? Like a month ago you told him? He never told me this. What do you like? You're leaving? And he was like, yeah, like the rates just became too much. Like I found other avenues out there for where I was able to get a lower rate, and
Case in point, I didn't
this
even know that was part of the story.
this weekend I'm moving out, taking all my stuff and moving it elsewhere. So Mike at this point was really devastated because it was Jack, the owner lied to me. Like he knew, he didn't tell me. It's like, well, that's I reassured Mike. It was like, hey, listen, like this is why we have a due diligence period. So let's like we don't know anything yet. Let's rework the numbers and see what we can possibly do here. Mike reworked the numbers. Again, he did that market study where he did try to update the numbers with this tenant no longer being here. However, unfortunately, the story does not have a happy ending in the standpoint of Mike did not close on Bay City, Michigan, but he was able to get out of his due diligence. He was able to get back his earnest money deposit. And the common theme today is he prevented him. Like he thought he was buying an asset, but he was going to be end up buying a liability if that would ended up closing. So
Yeah. So Jack, I think you missed the whole point of the episode. I think the story does have a happy ending because he dodged a significant financial, but that wasn't even a bullet. That thing was a
he
grenade waiting to go off. And look, folks, in traditional commercial real estate, this is why you do you do interviews with tenants, with leases, because you're trying to figure out, if you're the buyer, you get the tenant estoppels and you try to figure out, well, Are they staying? You know, how long are they staying? Are they likely to re-up? What does my exposure look like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years out with these leases? Well, we don't have that in storage, right? We're month to month, and that's the beauty of it, by the way. But when you start to see a concentration like this particular tenant in a facility, you actually have to start to look at that more like even though it's a short-term lease, it's a longer term, it's a longer term issue if you lose that one tenant and those many units, and in this case, 25% of the revenue of the facility, compounded by the fact that the guy was paying more above market rate. So there's a number of things going on in this deal right here to learn from. This is a great one to start with. So thanks for that. All right, let's switch gears to the father and son team, Jack, who thought they had a contract signed, I think, right? Tell us
Yeah.
what happened here.
So father son team, they were working on a deal in the Sun Belt, and it was a tough negotiation where there was a lot of back and forth with the seller. Don't believe the seller was using an attorney pretty much the entire time, and they actually came up on this deal quite a bit. Like originally, I think they came up like about 15 to 20% on their number, which was huge. But kind of like they went through the process. They talked to the third party managers. They had projections in place. They felt really good about the deal. They had a whole plan going forward from what they were going to do for boots on the ground, how they're going to do the advertising, who the third party manager was going to be, and they were kind of working through all of this throughout the purchase sale agreement, and they got it down literally to the last one or two deal points, and then it went a little quiet where it was like, hey, we're working on it. We're going to get it back to you by Wednesday, Thursday. We'll get it to you Friday. And then Saturday comes along and they finally got an email from the broker basically just being like, hey, we got a signed PSA. Everyone's excited. Like we're going to get started on due diligence. We're going to get everything moving here. And then they opened up the purchase sale agreement and they were like, wait, like, what is this? And they sent it to their attorney, and their attorney, because they weren't attorneys, but so they sent it to their attorney, and their attorney came back to them and was basically just said like, hey, we had like a 22-page contract, give or take. It's now 12 pages. Everything's redlined out of there, and now it's signed. But here you go. It was
it's easier to read through now. It's only 10 pages, 12 pages.
A couple things were missing. Those two final deal points were deleted. On top of a bunch of other things that were in the contract, where all of a sudden the guy who didn't have an attorney, it seemed like all of a sudden he found an attorney, but he basically took like the 2 weeks that they were going back and forth with the entire deal and erased everything and started from scratch.
So, and if I recall talking about this, everything that they had negotiated in good faith, not just through the LOI, but in conversations that made it into the contract that they sent to the seller, was just stripped out, right?
All gone.
Yeah,
every last piece of it,
with no cover letter, no, hey, look, guys, I know we talked about this, but it really doesn't work that way, or this doesn't work for me, or so here's my counter. Right. Here's, take a look, see if you could live with this. And folks, I'm saying this because this is a two-way process. This is it's not black and white. There's a ton of gray area in the negotiation of these deals. And when you come to a verbal agreement and then you spend money to have your attorney put that in the contract, and then that comes back completely stripped out with no follow-up conversation, just, yeah, I signed it, go ahead and sign it. It speaks to the character of the seller, not just the character, but even the manner in which they go about doing business. Some people will call that character. I don't know. There's ignorance and arrogance, I guess, and this was an unhealthy combination of the two. But I think what the father and son team realized is, hey, if this is how this guy is going to do business, the saying, I say this to my kids all the time: how you do anything is how you do everything. And if this is how the process is going to begin, with a complete bait and switch, what do you think the due diligence period is going to look like, where you're negotiating even more things and you haven't even physically gone through the property with your inspector yet? And there's
Something
probably going
came
to
up
be
in title or like something came up in the survey. Like,
exactly. Yeah. It
uh-oh,
reminded me of the deal we had in Pennsylvania where
I remember
um,
this one.
they wanted the subterranean rights. They wanted the billboard rights. They wouldn't give us, or they were really difficult about the non-compete. I think I talked about this recently on another podcast. And remember it got to the point where you were like, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't think I want to do business with these people. Every time we turn around, they want more. They say one thing and then they demand more. And it's a non-negotiating point for them. And that was just to get under contract.
And we
But
were worried
then
about that one too because this was a 4 property portfolio, and there was a gas station that was on the top of the hill.
there was going to be a lot to negotiate.
There
Yeah,
was gonna
there
be
was.
it looked like there was gonna be an environmental issue where
Yeah.
if we had
Well,
to negotiate out anything.
we don't need to get into this deal. The point is, there was going to be more negotiating, and that's all. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah,
And they weren't negotiating in good faith out of the gates.
yeah,
So how would the real negotiation go once you're under contract? Because folks, you don't have to close on it. We could have gotten out in our due diligence period, but what we would have done, and what this father-son team would have done, is spend money on attorneys, more money on the attorney. I already spent some. Inspections, survey, like you would have gone down the path of spending a lot of money only to realize you're dealing with someone who's a bad actor or has bad character or bad business practices, and you're probably going to end up walking away or put yourself in this kind of mental psychosis of, I've gone this far, I might as well just accept more and more and more, where you can't even see the forest from the trees anymore in at the stage of the deal you're in. And it's just, as soon as you see these signs, it's just important to back away and walk away. And it feels like a loss, but trust me, it's a win. All right. Let's move to the tax reassessment bomb in Texas, because this one almost cost someone their entire deal. So what happened here, Jack?
so this deal was in Texas. Beautiful facility. Oh my gosh. It was, they had the oversized storage units. They had the traditional storage units. I mean, like that the owner had not raised rents in, I want to say, at least 2 to 3 years. Paved, lights, cameras. I mean, the guy took care of it like it was built yesterday. It was probably like 5, 10, 15 years old. I forget exactly how old the facility was, but it was beautiful. One of the best looking facilities I've seen. Revenue probably had this facility worth roughly around like 125, 130, but uh, it was listed originally for 1.75 or 1.8, and they got it down to 1.5 million, where everything was looking great. So property was about to go under contract. I got pulled in at this point, and we're going through everything. And the one thing that I realized was like, hey, taxes were about $10,000 a year, and year one, it was still gonna be $10,000 a year. And I was like, sweet, that's awesome. Like, did we validate this with the county? Like, oh, you know what? Like that, we were told from like the person we were working with, like nothing should change. Okay, great. It'd be an easy call. You should probably make it. Let's just dot our I's, cross our T's, and let's see what happens. So we're like, all right, yeah, like no problem. We'll just do that tomorrow. Perfect. So they make the call. The next day I get a frantic call being like, Jack, like I called the county and I like they can't be right. Like, they're not right. It's like, okay, well, what happened? Taxes are going to go from $10,000 to $27,000 a year.
Ruh-roh.
So all of a sudden now your tax basis was going up about $17,000 because they reassessed its sale, and they're right on top of it. Like once they tried to rework things with cost segregation and allocations and however else they were doing it. It was, no, we look at the greater of the assessed price or the purchase price, whichever's greater. So now all of a sudden this deal that they were able to stretch, because again, it was worth probably about like 125, 130. They were going to pay a premium for it because
What was the cap rate on this deal? Do you remember?
I want to say it was originally it was right around a 6.
Okay, go ahead. I just want to do a quick calculation while you're telling your story.
So then all of a sudden, when this and like the debt service on the deal for the first year went from basically averaging out to being like 1.07 ish. They would have been able to go through the SBA because they were going to hit that 1.15 threshold by the end of the year. However, with this reassessment, they were barely going to hit the 1-to-1 ratio. Like I think they were going to, like, their average at first year, I think, was going to be somewhere around like a 0.95. And that was with over a 10% increase, which is, I don't typically like going over 10%, but in this scenario, it looks like they maybe could have, but I don't want
That's
to
a,
know about
this is assuming the lender would have financed the deal
that. Correct.
because it just dropped in value by 283 grand at a 6 cap.
That's nuts.
And what was the purchase price?
The purchase price they were looking to do, where the owner was ready to go, was 1.5 million.
Yeah, that's huge.
So
Huge amount. So what's the for someone listening, what's the key takeaway here? I mean, obviously our student did the right thing.
yeah. So the big thing, and I say this to all of our students a lot of the times, is trust but verify. It's and sometimes when you call some of these counties, some of the people that are on there on the other end, they're busy. They don't want to talk about a commercial asset that you're possibly buying to talk to you about taxes. But if it doesn't work at noon, try again at 3. If it doesn't work at 3, try again tomorrow. It's one of the most important steps that you kind of go through in the real estate process. And don't always bank on those cost segregation, because what ended up happening is a lot of these counties have altered to that now as well within their tax codes. And unfortunately here, no two states and no two counties are really the same, where you got to really understand what those counties and states are going to do within the taxes. So one of the best things for you to do in due diligence is to call the county and have that conversation as to what's going to happen to your taxes. Because here again, Joe just said it's $283,000 that changed the value
In value, and then obviously the debt service coverage ratio wasn't going to work either at that point. But
and then you
yeah,
have
I
your
mean, I just covered this in the Storage 100 series, that people, we get all, as we should, we get super excited and into the numbers and the, pro forma and this and that. And a lot of people skip the very, very, very boring steps of confirming taxes and what's my new insurance going to be. We just take the seller's old numbers, we plug them in, and we worry about the unit mix and raising rates and what's the competition doing. And that's all very, very, very important. But I would argue even more important is understanding what my taxes and insurance are going to be when I become the new owner, because they're the hidden costs. You can't market your way out of them. There's nothing you can do. You have no control over it. You could try to appeal, and you can shop insurance, but it's a futile cost. And you want to talk about effort? My goodness, just get it right and avoid the bad deals. Avoid deal killers like this. All right, we have time, Jack, for the fourth. Let's do it.
Oh man.
We've got the Paul, Idaho deal. Tell us what were the red flags here?
So
why do we have a red flag parade?
This one was interesting from the start, because they used and you could probably do a whole nother podcast on this, but they did like a state issued purchase sale agreement on it, where they had a certain amount of time for the due diligence. They had everything else in there, but then the closing date said something different than what was in the due diligence. And it was confusing to see which trumped what. And then as we that was like the first red flag, but then it just kept going, where we got this under contract, where this fell out of contract twice. This was the third time now this deal was under contract with these students, and there were different people not in our program for the first 2 students, but this was the third time that this same deal was being sold. And the big hurdle here was the seller did not want to share his tax returns. Now, little lesson for you guys out there shopping for deals is, if you want to go through the bank, one of the number one things that is required for you to have the bank evaluate is going to be the tax returns. So if someone's telling you they're not going to give you tax returns and you're trying to get bank debt, it's going to be a little difficult unless you're looking to buy the deal outright in cash. And if you were doing that, I would still encourage you to look at the tax returns to make sure that the revenue they're reporting is actually what they're reporting to the state as well. And then
All right.
from there, it kept going.
Give
So
me the highlights. What were the lowlights? What were the without going too deep into them? What were they?
yeah, so this one there was again like there was three tenants here that equated about 35% of the revenue of the facility.
Another concentration issue. Not necessarily a deal killer, but we got
No.
to understand it.
Two were late consistently,
Now
and
it's a deal killer.
you didn't know if, like, I mean, again, you would have been able to figure something out. But going back to your point from that first example that we went over, it was one that the plan in this deal was to raise everybody at once. So if you raise
Oh
those
boy.
tenants at the same time, like it didn't seem like a lot at like the 10%, but it was over a couple grand.
Well, on top of that, two of them are already late, so they can't pay the rent on the books, and now you're planning on raising them. Yeah, that's a recipe for
Are you
disaster.
going to collect their late fees? Or are you going to not pay, like, collect their late fees? What are you going to do?
And then anything else going on here? This deal was a peach, from what I recall.
Well, then there is this is one that we again, this is another thing that you can kind of go into probably on another episode, but we dug deeper into the unit mix here, and all the larger size units, like the 10 by 25s, the 10 by 30s, 10 by 40s, they were all full. It was great. However, more than 50% of the facility was 10 by 10s and 10 by 15s. And those were 20% occupied. And they
Mm.
just expanded upon it too, where it was like the number didn't change. Like once they brought on all those additional units online, the demand wasn't coming. Like nobody wanted the 10 by 10s and the 10 by 15s in this market.
Yeah. So in one deal, you got a concentration in tenants and units and tenants. You got two of them late. You got a bad unit mix and a shady seller. That's a winner.
It's a fun one.
But folks, this is what we're going to run into out there. And like I said, I was having this conversation the other night on our open office hours call. I said, people are frustrated, but I found this deal and this fell apart and this deal and that. And I said, look, the important thing is you're having conversations with sellers. This is just part of going through it. We got to sift through, weed through, find the the serious seller with the real value add and where we can make a difference that don't have hidden landmines and time bombs just waiting to go off. So, no, this was great. I love talking about, look, we love to talk about successes, but as crazy as it sounds, these are successes too, actually, because in each of these cases, the students, the first time buyers, avoided serious time bombs. So, no, I think it's great, and I love sharing stories like this because I just want everybody to understand it, because due diligence isn't an option; it's survival in this business. So, Mike avoided buying a property that would have been underwater in day one because the tenant was moving out. The father and son team avoided doing a deal with someone that was probably going to end up not happening anyway. And so what they avoided was spending another 10, 15 grand and losing it. And then, a Texas student avoided buying a deal that the bank wouldn't have financed. And then, the Idaho story, man, it's got everything all in one. So, but again, folks, these aren't failure stories. These are success stories in my eyes, because success is protecting yourself from a bad investment. Success is living to fight another day. Success is having your capital intact when the right deal comes along. And here's the thing. None of these first-time buyers were doing this alone. They had accountability partners. They had mentors. They had community of people who'd seen these situations before and could ask the right questions. And that's why belonging to a mastermind community matters. So you get a fresh set of fresh eyes, experienced perspectives, and people will tell you the truth even when it's sometimes not what you want to hear. So if you're listening, you're serious about self-storage investing and what kind of support systems out there, check out our mastermind at thestoragemastermind.com, thestoragemastermind.com. And if you're still learning the game or you're looking to get into it, go over to YouTube and look for my name, Joe Downs, and the channel, The Storage Moguls Mastermind. You're going to find the Storage 100 series. As of this recording, I'm up over 60 days of 60 straight days of self-storage videos covering all of these topics. And from acquisitions, operations to financing, it's all free. It's all there for you. Remember, folks, sometimes the best deals, I should say, are the ones you don't do. So stay disciplined, do your homework. Don't be afraid to walk away. Thanks for listening. See you next week.